Bickley and Marotta Mornings. Arizona Sports. The local sports leader. Bickley Blast.
When it comes to optimism, Mat Ishbia is full of it. He is so positive and so frenetic that it occasionally sounds like he's gaslighting, but there is something about his last tweet that might be problematic. He said, quote, "We are competing for a championship this year because we have the team to do it." Now, it doesn't matter what you or I think about that statement, but it does matter what his players in the locker room feel. And if they think the owner has unrealistic expectations, or if he's misguided about the quality of team he's assembled, if he's expecting miracles for his money, well, that can sabotage team morale before it even begins. And this is where you begin to wonder about Kevin Durant. Does he look at the departed Frank Vogel as the issue, a head coach who did not instill much hope or accountability, or does he look at the organization and say, yeah, this ain't it? Does he look at this new team and say, yeah, we're not winning a championship? Because really, Durant has got the most on the line here. He's a guaranteed Hall of Famer, often described as one of the greatest players in sports history. He also knows that another championship would go a long way in shutting up his detractors, the ones who erroneously think he coattailed his way to the rings he already possesses. So does he really love Phoenix, the basketball franchise, the way he's grown to appreciate Phoenix, the lifestyle? That is the question. All right, today's Bickley Blast brought to you by my great friends at Chapman BMW. Make luxury attainable. Find them online at chapmanbmw.com.
And I love that people are frustrated that we didn't win an NBA championship. Guess what? So are we. We're disappointed. We want to win an NBA championship. You know, it's one thing to win 49 games and everyone get knocked out in the first round of playoffs and everyone high-fiving you. That's not what we're going to have in Phoenix. And it makes me happy. So I'm actually happy where we're at from that perspective, that people are disappointed, because guess what? There's not someone in the organization that's more disappointed than me, my GM, my CEO, my players, my coach. Everyone's disappointed, just like the fans. And guess what? I'm going to own the team for 50 years, and probably 45, 46, 47 of those years, we'll probably have the same conversation.
7 championships. That was back on May 1st. That was actually the date, Bick, of the weird press conference. After the Suns got eliminated, Mat Ishbia spoke separately from James Jones. There was no change really being announced. 3 weeks later is when we got the introductory press conference for Mike Budenholzer replacing Frank Vogel. But yeah, the first line of the blast today is very well done.
Thank you. When it
comes to optimism,
Mat Ishbia is full of it. It's very, very true.
And he is.
Yeah, and listen, and the tweet that he put out in response to Stephen A. Smith does include that line I used in the blast. We are competing for a championship this year because we have the team to do it. Now, you might just say, well, that's what every owner would say. But again, I'm talking about how it is perceived inside a locker room. If you're Kevin Durant and you're looking around saying, we ain't got a shot, then that's the kind of thing that might make you go, what am I doing here? Now, I'm just speaking.
Yes.
Unlike Stephen A. Smith, I'm not reporting.
I'm not reporting.
Right.
This has been an interesting week, especially at this point of the season, for national perspective on the Suns. Again, we're more insulated. It's right here in our backyard. It's certainly more of an everyday following here in Phoenix than it is for a lot of these national personalities. But wanted to share one with you, and Jarrett referenced this during the Rush Hour reboot. Nick Wright from Fox Sports and FS1 has some pretty critical thoughts on the Phoenix Suns.
Phoenix is incredibly high on the NBA's no clue what they're doing list. They are right now in the grasp of one of, to use your buddy's coined phrase, new owner syndrome, one of the worst cases of it in NBA history. And because they have just pressed the accelerator down fully for Kevin Durant, made sense but was risky. For Bradley Beal, didn't make sense, was incredibly risky. And I think now Brew is in something of denial about how close they actually are to contention, that the team might view this roster's championship aspirations differently than the players on it. So it wouldn't shock me at all if Kevin Durant's like, yeah, I've kind of always been restless. and this is not going the way I thought it was going to go, and I wouldn't want to be here. I think it would be smart if Phoenix traded Kevin Durant and accepted their reality of we're not contending during what is left of his, tail end of his prime.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're going to do it before the season because I don't think Mat Ishbia wants to accept that reality.
Yeah,
Now, that's interesting.
It is interesting.
And again, I don't agree with a lot of what Nick Wright is saying there, but I do think that this level of expectations, if this isn't just Mat Ishbia speaking in optimism, then I do think that this could be an issue. This could be an issue if you as an owner are expecting something you haven't given the team enough assets to pull off.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I object to the new owner syndrome. I understand what it is. I've seen examples of it. There's lots of examples of it. I think there's a difference with Mat Ishbia. And again, is the money he pours into this team and blowing through tax aprons, that has to be applauded, okay? Because this is very, very rare. He's not the wealthiest owner in the NBA by a long shot.
No, not even close.
And there's only one other guy, Steve Ballmer, who's willing to do what he's done. Joe Lacob of Golden State was doing it for a while, and he finally said, I'm not spending this kind of money.
They're still way over the second apron in Golden State. They're still dealing with it.
Because once you do this and you sign these players, you're inheriting this as your lifestyle for the next few years. So you've got to really be okay with flushing money when the seasons do not pan out. So I take exception with that, but I do believe that kind of expectation can create a little divide if the players in that room can't live up to the owner's expectations.
Well, Nick Wright in sharing his thoughts, and there was some interesting things in there, and I don't necessarily agree with him either, but he's making the point that I've been making this entire offseason. I was just as frustrated as everybody else. I can use very comfortably words like failure. Last year was a failure by the Phoenix Suns organization. They will admit it. But what people like Nick Wright and a lot of national perspectives and even some local fans are guilty of is because the most recent sample you got of something doesn't guarantee that it's going to be repeated.
Right.
This is competition. Again, I will point to the Boston Celtics, who they're never going to win a championship with Tatum and Brown together. They're too similar. Well, guess what? They just won a championship. The Minnesota Timberwolves were the team being viewed as clueless for the trade that they made with Utah to bring in Rudy Gobert. How many bigs do you need? That's never going to work. It worked for them, and they're on the way up. The Dallas Mavericks were raked over the coals. They got Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic, the most unbelievably talented offensive backcourt ever. They didn't make the playoffs, and a year later they're playing for the championship.
I'm gonna separate one of those examples from the other two because Dallas was their ascension was completely related to their trade deadline maneuvers, where they significantly upgraded their front line. They significantly upgraded their basketball team.
They did, but that team still goes with that duo.
I do. Right.
That's the engine that drives that team.
Right. But again, when you start talking about superstar duos, we got one as well, and it didn't take flight. And the Dallas lesson is it won't take flight until you've got the right group of quality players around him. The Boston thing, same thing. Yeah. You throw in Drew Holiday and everything changes. So, but the Minnesota thing,
Derek White, Kristaps Porzingis,
yes.
There was more pieces there.
Okay, the Minnesota thing I vibe on because that was more about Anthony Edwards continuing to grow. And if that's like Devin Booker next year, then everything can change. So, yeah, I do agree with you. I do agree that things can change. Chemistry can change overnight in the NBA. It can also go away overnight. We've seen that the hard way. So I do agree with you. I don't think it's hopeless by any stretch of the imagination.
There's so much talk almost entirely about Booker and Durant, and I just keep thinking, like, is Bradley Beal the right third piece?
Doesn't matter whether he is or not. He's not going anywhere.
I know. But that's what I'm saying. If you're stuck with that as your third piece, can you ever win? Because all the examples you just mentioned, they acquired the right third piece. Drew Holiday with Boston, Rudy Gobert with Minnesota.
But his point is Rudy Gobert 2 years ago was not considered a wise acquisition, and he became one last year. Could Bradley Beal do that? Here's the thing Wolf has been riffing on that I agree with as well. I just wonder if I were in charge of this basketball team and I'm looking at Kevin Durant and I'm looking at potential trades, what would appeal to me isn't anything to do with Kevin Durant, but what it does, what I would look at is the impact on Devin Booker. It is very, very clear to me that Devin Booker defers to Kevin Durant because that's how Devin Booker is built. If you're of an older, Devin Booker is a rare young professional athlete who actually has real respect for his elders. We saw that with Al McCoy very, very clearly. He's got a sense of history. You don't have a sense of history unless you appreciate history. And you don't appreciate history if you don't acknowledge the people that came before you. And I think he sees Kevin Durant and he's like, that's KD, man. It's the DA thing. That's KD. Can you believe that?
Ain't that something?
Ain't that something?
We got KD. Ain't that something?
So for Devin Booker to be that dude, can he be that dude with Kevin Durant around? And again, this is not having to do with Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant's a very selfless, generous player. It has to do with how Devin Booker perceives everything around him. I think there's something to that. But it doesn't mean it has to be going forward. What you said is 100%. I put most of my optimism on the Timberwolves example from a year ago. Stuff can change dramatically. Look at the Nuggets last year. Nuggets didn't have nearly the connectivity they did during their championship year.
No, but again, that's where I was guilty of what I just laid out there. The Nuggets are the defending champions. They've got the best player in the league in Jokic. They're going to win the championship again, or at least get back to the Western Conference Finals. Things change all the time. If they didn't change, why would anybody watch sports?
Mm-hmm.
It just that's the part that frustrates me. And I'm not sitting here saying it's guaranteed. Mike Budenholzer and his new staff have a lot of work to do to repair what was done last year. But I'm not saying it can't be done either.
Thanks for watching Bickley and Marotta. Click to see the latest Bickley Blast and hit the button in the middle to subscribe to Arizona Sports.